Why good people turn into monsters. They were kind once, helpful, caring, patient, the type of person who always said yes, the type who kept the peace, who avoided conflict, who gave more than they got. But something changed. Now they snap easily. Now they seem cold, withdrawn, maybe even cruel. Now they feel like someone else. And everyone wonders, what happened to them? But no one stops to ask, what did the world do to them to make them change? Where the change begins. Good people don't turn into monsters overnight. It starts quietly. The first sign is tiredness. Emotional, not physical. They begin to feel invisible, unheard, taken for granted. They give and give, hoping the world will notice. But the world only notices when they stop. And so they learn to suppress their needs, their opinions, their truth. Because each time they spoke up, they were called difficult. Each time they asked for something, they were told they were selfish. So they silenced themselves. Not because they want peace, but because peace was demanded at the cost of their voice. And here's the cruel irony. The nicer they were, the less they were respected. The more they gave, the less they were seen. And that kind of invisibility, it's the breeding ground for rage, the birth of quiet rage. Anger doesn't always arrive with fists or shouting. Sometimes it simmers, silently, invisibly, beneath a polite smile, behind a helpful gesture. You see, when good people suppress their truth long enough, it doesn't vanish, it mutates. It becomes a quiet resentment, a bitterness that says, I'm always there for them, but where are they for me? It becomes small acts of rebellion, canceled plans, ignored texts, emotional withdrawal. And society doesn't like this version, because when good people stop playing their role, they're suddenly labeled rude, cold, or toxic. No one sees the years of over-functioning, people-pleasing, and emotional labor they carried. Their kindness was never a weakness. It was a quiet scream, disguised as selflessness. And that scream? It eventually turns into fire. A fire that burns not others, but everything they once tried to protect. The breaking point no one sees. There's a moment no one notices. A silent crack in the surface. They still smile. They still nod. They still say, it's fine. But inside, something has snapped. They no longer believe their kindness matters. They no longer think anyone will show up for them. So they stop showing up too. Not with anger, but with absence. They become less available, less responsive, less nice. And people start asking, what's wrong with you? But no one ever asked what it took to keep them together for so long. Because good people often suffer quietly. They don't scream, they vanish. And when they finally walk away, they don't slam the door. They just disappear into silence. And that's when you know, you didn't just lose a good person, you wore them out. The slow disappearance of the self. It's not like they chose to become distant. They didn't wake up one day and decide to care less. It was gradual, invisible, like erosion. Each time they swallowed their truth, they chipped away at their identity. Each time they said yes when they meant no, they buried themselves a little deeper. Until one day, they looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. Not because they changed too much, but because they never had the space to fully become. The world loved them for what they provided: peace, reliability, calm, but never asked who they truly were. So they learned to survive as a reflection, someone who met others' needs while slowly forgetting their own. This isn't just emotional fatigue, it's identity loss. And the tragedy? No one mourns it, because no one knew who was lost. When the good turns dark, there comes a point where something shifts. The smiles fade faster, the patience wears thin, the warmth disappears. But not because they've become cruel, because they've become empty. Years of suppression, people-pleasing, and emotional labor don't just vanish. They transform. What once was kindness turns into sarcasm. What once was understanding becomes withdrawal. What once was compassion becomes coldness. And the world gasps. How could someone so good become so bitter? But that's the wrong question. Ask instead, what did they go through that made kindness feel dangerous? What kind of exhaustion turns empathy into silence? They didn't become monsters. They became mirrors. reflecting back the neglect, the expectations, the imbalance. The truth is, they're not angry without reason. They're angry because no one noticed the pain beneath the goodness. Monsters are made, not born. We like to think monsters are born, that something's just wrong with them. It's easier that way. Cleaner. Safer. It means we don't have to ask hard questions. But real monsters? They're made in plain sight, by 1,000 moments of being dismissed, by years of giving without being refilled, by being the strong one for too long. They are created in classrooms, in homes, in friendships, in every, "you're too sensitive," in every, "don't make a scene," in every time their pain was inconvenient. Their anger didn't come out of nowhere. It came from being told over and over, "Your pain doesn't matter here." And eventually, they believed it. But pain doesn't die when ignored. It festers. And when it festers long enough, it changes form. Sometimes into silence. Sometimes into cruelty. Sometimes into a version of themselves they don't even like. When kindness becomes a mask. Not all kindness is pure. Sometimes it's survival, a defense, a disguise. Some people learn early that being nice keeps them safe, that if they smile, agree, and stay small, they won't be punished, abandoned, or shamed. So they master kindness, not as an expression of love, but as a shield. They become the peacemaker, the therapist friend, the reliable one. But behind that role is a tired soul, because performing kindness without reciprocity drains the spirit. They give compliments they don't feel. They say yes when their whole body screams no. They show up for others even when they're falling apart. Eventually, the mask cracks, and when it does, people are shocked. How could someone so kind explode like that? But the better question is, how much pain did they bury to keep being kind? The body always tells the truth. You can fake a smile, you can fake calm, you can even fake love. But the body, it never lies. That tightness in your chest, that constant fatigue, that restlessness at night, that sudden burst of irritation over something small. It's all truth, leaking out through muscle and nerve. Because when you spend your life pretending everything's okay, your body takes the hit. It holds the words you didn't say, the boundaries you never set, the years of showing up for others while abandoning yourself. You don't need another supplement. You don't need another routine. You need to listen to your body's grief. It's not malfunctioning. It's communicating. And the message is simple. You can't carry this anymore. When enough is finally enough. There isn't always a dramatic moment. No yelling, no slamming doors, no big meltdown. Sometimes it's just a quiet decision. I'm done. Done explaining. Done giving chances. Done proving your worth to people who only see your usefulness. And that moment, it doesn't look angry. It looks tired, calm, cold, detached. Because real burnout doesn't explode. It evaporates. You stop chasing connection. You stop expecting reciprocity. You stop caring about being understood. Because it feels like a luxury you can't afford anymore. And that's when they say, you've changed. But they don't realize, you didn't change. You returned to yourself. You simply let go of the version of you that was built for their comfort. Anger isn't the enemy, it's the alarm. People say, don't be angry. Stay calm. Rise above it. But what if anger wasn't something to rise above, but something to listen to? Anger shows up when boundaries are broken, when dignity is denied, when kindness is taken for weakness, again and again. And yet, good people learn to fear it. They swallow it, dress it up as patience, call it forgiveness. But suppressed anger doesn't become peace. It becomes poison. It sits in the chest like heat, burns behind the eyes, leaks into relationships in sideways, unspoken ways. Anger doesn't mean you're cruel. It means you've been hurt. And ignoring that pain doesn't make you a better person. It just makes you easier to use. So let it speak. Let it guide you back to your center. Because the opposite of being a monster isn't silence, it's truth. The reconstruction of the real self. After the collapse comes the silence. Not empty, sacred. It's the first time you can actually hear yourself think. Not what they want you to think. Not who you were trained to be. But you, raw, uncertain, and honest. You begin asking questions you were never allowed to ask. What do I want? What do I feel? What have I been avoiding just to keep the peace? The answers don't come all at once. But the act of asking, that's power. You begin building a life around your truth, not their approval. You say no without guilt. You rest without permission. You exist without apology. And slowly, the pieces come back together, not into the old version of you, but into someone new, real, rooted, and no longer afraid of being misunderstood. Boundaries are how you heal. Good people are taught to be open, to say yes, to be flexible, to be available. But healing doesn't happen in exposure. It happens in protection. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're sacred. They're the line between generosity and self-erasure, between compassion and burnout. A boundary says, I care about you, but not at the cost of myself. I will help, but I am not here to be drained. And when you start setting them, people will push back. They will say you've changed. They will accuse you of being cold or distant. Let them, because for the first time, you're not building walls to keep love in. You're building a door that only opens from your side. Boundaries are how good people stay good without being destroyed by it. You were never a monster. They called you angry, difficult, bitter. They said you changed. But here's the truth. You didn't become a monster. You just got tired of bleeding quietly. You stopped being who they wanted and started becoming who you needed. You started saying no. You started showing your full range of emotion. You started making space for your truth, even if it made others uncomfortable. And yes, it looked unfamiliar. Yes, it looked messy, but it was real. And for the first time, it was yours. You were never the villain. You were the mirror, the signal, the warning. And now, you're not apologizing for taking up space. Not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you're finally done hurting yourself. You didn't turn into a monster. You turned into someone who refuses to disappear.